Hi, I'm Lindsey, and I'm talking with MedTech industry leaders on how they change lives for a better world.
The inventions and technologies are fascinating, and so are the people who work with them.
There was a period of time where I realized fundamentally my job was to go hang out with really smart people that are saving lives and then do work that would help them save more lives.
I got into the business to save lives, and it is incredibly motivating to work with people who are in that same business, saving or improving lives.
What better industry than where I get to wake up every day and just save people's lives?
These are extraordinary people doing extraordinary work, and this is The Leading Difference. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Leading Difference podcast. I'm your host, Lindsey, and today I'm delighted to welcome Logan McKnight. Logan is the founder of GoodKnight Consulting and a strategic advisor to MedTech executives navigating growth, leadership challenges, and operational complexity. With nearly 20 years in neuromonitoring and surgical services, including experience as a CEO, VP of operations, and business development leader, Logan brings an experienced perspective to executive leadership. She works with directors, VPs, and C-suite leaders to build teams that can scale without sacrificing culture or burning out. Well, welcome to the show, Logan. I'm so glad to speak with you today, and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I appreciate you inviting me.
Of course. I'd love if you wouldn't mind starting off by sharing just a little bit about yourself, your background, and what led you to MedTech.
Of course. Yeah. So my name is Logan McKnight, and I have been in MedTech for almost the last 20 years. And I think my journey, a lot of people have a very similar origin story of haphazardly finding their way into MedTech. I was pre-med in college. I wanted to go into veterinary school. And I think I panicked, honestly, last minute, not really wanting to go. I interned under a vet who basically dissuaded me from doing all the work of vet school and said, go to med school. And feeling a little lost, I found my way to med tech, particularly neuromonitoring, which was a field pretty niche, but basically I got trained by a company to go in and run equipment and monitor patients' nervous systems during surgery. And to me, just having my bachelor's degree and having that level of impact and being able to jump right into patient care without having to go to more, years and years of schooling was right up my alley. And it's been such a wild ride. I was a technologist, and then I became a manager, and then VP of business development and head of contracting. And then I went over to a small company where I was the vice president of the whole company and then eventually CEO. And now I'm consulting for MedTech companies. So it's been a really fun journey that I didn't plan at all.
Yeah. Okay, well, excellent. And that brings up so many questions. But to start, so you were thinking originally you might want to be a vet. Did you have, did you grow up with animals? Did you just have an amazing love for them? Where did that come from?
Honestly, I think I would have had way more animals, but my parents were a lot more reasonable than I was. So we just had the regular pets. But I grew up horseback riding and in the Midwest in Ohio. So I was around a lot of farm animals and things like that. And I was part of FFA and horticulture. So Future Farmers of America. And I actually was really interested in large animals because I didn't want to deal with people. I didn't want to deal with people or their pets. So, and so that was what panicked me about med school was the whole plan with veterinary school was to avoid the people part. And then I found through med tech, neuromonitoring and surgery where the patients are asleep. And so I still got to do all the things that I love, like providing impact, but then, not having to worry about, I guess for me, I just had in my head, all the challenges and complications that dealing with patients that I thought would make my job and life really difficult. So it's been really fun to kind of focus on just care and how to move things forward and explore this big wide open space of how to impact people's lives in surgery.
Yeah. Yeah. And, what's interesting about that too is though, I think it sounds to me like throughout your career though, as you've, gone from technologist and then you've had all of these amazing career changes and growth basically. It sounds like, you have developed, though, your own kind of leadership style. So even though maybe originally you weren't sure about dealing with people, so to speak, you've actually excelled at it. So I'm curious, how that has evolved for you in creating and managing teams.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like initially I was trying to control all these variables before I got into leadership and people and then realized you can't do that once you get to actually working with people. And once you almost like acknowledge and recognize you can't control that, but there's some beauty in that of you just allow for what you allow. And then, you have to give people the ability to function like at their level and you create the parameters. But other than that, like some magic happens when you don't try to control every single thing. And I see so many, especially new managers, being like, I need to control everything. And they're wondering why they're exhausted or their team's not respecting them. And it's like, gotta let go of the wheel a little bit. So, I think those are some lessons that sometimes they just come with time and experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when you started, well, let's go back to maybe it's kind of at the beginning of your career. What are some things that you learned as a technologist and as you were growing within the hospital systems themselves that contributed to basically where you would become now to become an entrepreneur and all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I will be very honest, and this is not meant to be a dig at anybody who I'd worked with or any boss, but I went to work for a private company and we were almost like hired mercenaries. So we would go to like, yeah, every day I was in a different hospital. I didn't know my schedule to the night before. I rarely saw my manager and, rarely saw other members of my team. And it really felt like I was very isolated and alone. And it added to my burnout and also feeling like I didn't have anyone looking out for me and my back as a younger employee. And I realized there was so much room for improvement there in how you manage a team remotely. And so I think I just like mentally, I was a psychology major before I switched to pre-med. And so I think like like human brain, so I was, neuroscience, but psychology, I think is so fascinating to me and the way people tick and what makes them tick. And I'm a big believer. If you can figure out the way people tick, you can unlock so many things in the world. And like you can be the most brilliant person, but if you can't communicate effectively, if you can't manage a team, you're really not going to take things to the next level because you're not going to activate those people around you to perform and get something done. So yeah, I feel like it was a case study for me to kind of watch like these managers and struggle. And I'm like, that's what I'm not going to do.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes learning from examples that maybe you wish you didn't have to learn from can
Right.
be the best teachers and actually serve your own leadership style and your people that you end up getting to influence. It actually does help in the long term. But so
Totally.
So when you started GoodKnight Consulting, what was the impetus for that? I mean, you've had this amazing career so far. You're ready kind of just for the next step, or what sparked that?
It's interesting. I stepped down from my CEO position because I was running a neuromonitoring service company in the Pacific Northwest. We also had a professional services arm with neurologists. And then I had a medical billing company that I was running. We did mostly out of network billing. And then we also started a company in India right before COVID. So by 2023, I was fried. I was very burnt out in the way that I felt like I was busy all the time, but not really having the same impact I used to have. I think a lot of that was like I got more involved on the litigious side of running a company. And then also the medical billing side really takes it out of you. So the thing I enjoyed was the coaching and the mentoring. And once I took a little bit of a step back and thought about what would I do every day for free? Like what would I just love to do? And the reality was coaching other leaders, especially one like scratched my itch for helping people and provide and like impact, which I realize is my biggest driver is like, how do I impact the most people and walk away with, my life feeling like I've touched people in a positive way. And I think that's, my driving force. So that's kind of why I started. And I started honestly just trying to go to leaders individually and offer some webinars and some one-on-one coaching. And then I really realized working with companies actually is the best way to go about this because you get ownership and leadership that's totally aligned and they want that support for their leaders. And then it's so much easier to see the impact spread throughout an organization. So that's been really cool, is to be this outside force driving an owner or an executive's vision of what they want their company or the team to be.
Yeah. And I noticed when I was, reading a little bit more about the company, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is you talk about this is not just, let's say, leadership or mindset coaching or something like that, although that is very important as well. It is also about the business strategy. And you talk a lot about, you've been in the position to understand how much, of course, revenue matters. You have to, make sure that's a strong, foundation for the business. So how do you balance the two when you work with clients?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think every client is unique. I have found that just stripping away, actually, it was something a blog post I was working on today and something I posted on LinkedIn. And it's something I find myself saying to founders and owner operators all the time: simple scales.
Mm.
And I think, what ends up happening is a lot of times you get this great idea for a product, a service, a company, and you just go and you don't sometimes sit down and create like the true mission or the vision and like the values of the company. And it's really hard for owner operators and people who are in startup land and, small businesses to pause and do that, especially if they've been going for a few years. Because, it's like, well, I've been operating without this stuff. It's totally fine. The reality is it's so much easier to grow and scale, and also to gut check yourself when you're making decisions and being like, this is the right call because this aligns with our mission and our vision for the company or our growth initiatives for this year. And then it aligns with my values. I feel good about this decision and I can communicate it to people I hire. So I trust those people. And like, that's what scales, is the trust and people having like the unified mission and vision and values. And like, I know it sounds a little touchy feely, but the reality is like, that's actually what I feel like I end up centering owners and operators on. It's less about the minutia and the details, more about, does this make sense with where you want to go and the way you want to get there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah, I really like that. And with the emphasis on the unified team, in terms of, we don't all have to view life exactly the same, but we need to be aligned at least with our mission and values and things like that. What do you find are some of the best practices when it comes to building out a team? And on the flip side, what are some things that maybe are common or that feel like they would be good practices, but in reality might not be? Like, what are some lessons learned, I suppose, on both sides?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'll be honest, I think a lot of owners and maybe leaders who've been in their position for a while, like, I was talking to somebody else about this, about your gut feeling and like go with your gut. And trust me, I was a big go with my gut leader, especially as a CEO, but like that doesn't scale because you have to be able to verbalize like, what are the things you're looking for? Why did you pick this person? And so at the end of the day, I had a policy when I was probably when I became a CEO, that I needed to like approve after a couple not so great hires. I needed to approve every hire. Like the reality is that's not realistic. That's not going to scale as you grow. And so I just needed to create this is what we're looking for. Like, we're hiring for attitude. We can train the aptitude. We can train the technical depending on what the job is. But, here's what we're really looking for, is a good fit for the company and the culture. And then once I had people who I knew really got that and saw the vision, I knew they were going to make the right choices. And so I didn't feel like I had to be the one making that decision. I could scale it and help, allow my team to hire for the people in the places that they needed and saw.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I really like that. So one thing that I thought was interesting, especially so on your LinkedIn profiles, I was, enjoying reading more about you and some of the things you've done. But you had mentioned that sometimes there's a trade-off between hitting targets and then you're burning out your team. For the opposite, you're protecting your team, but then you're not hitting your targets. Could you speak a little bit more about that and how you help companies sort of overcome that challenge?
No, and I mean, I think it's like I think when I first became a leader, talking about how I viewed my other leaders, maybe what not to do. I definitely swung the pendulum too far the other direction when I first started, and I was way too, I don't know, I was way too all the things I didn't get. And so,
Mm.
too, like checking in with my team, how are you doing? Not wanting to delegate work to them and doing these things because, and so I realized I think that's like an initial thing a lot of leaders go through is that shift. It's when you get stuck in the one extreme or the other, and you don't really find your good equilibrium that it's really hard to sustain. And I think it's really important to find your equilibrium of like, this drives us to hit quota. This drives us to get our metrics and to for success. And then it does it in a sustainable way that our team is going to stay. Because to me, like, sustainable, I kind of was thinking about my values even this morning, and I'm like, I think fun is really one of my values. Like, I want to really enjoy, like, not just my personal life, but my professional life. And I think your job, your company, all of those things is a lot more fun when it's sustainable,
Mm.
right? When you're like exhausted. So finding a way for it to be sustainable for your team, and everyone likes to win. Like, it's fun to hit quota. It's fun to like crush your metrics and celebrate. So how do make that sustainable and fun? And I think that's like a long-term success or a recipe for success with a company.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting because actually this has come up a couple of times recently on the podcast is the sort of core value of fun and how much that does actually transform people's experience with the company. And, because inevitably you're going to have those days that are just really tough and hard. And so being able to, though, have a culture of fun and joy it does make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. I remember when I first started working in surgery and someone asked me, they're like, "Oh, is it like Grey's Anatomy?" And, and I'm like, it's not nearly as like sexy. Like there's
Yeah.
no, doctors in closets and whatever.
Right.
It's actually more like the show Scrubs.
Oh, yeah.
And the reality is, and people are like, "Oh, that seems like goofy and comedy." I'm like, I know. I think the reality is we view in like healthcare and med tech of like this, taking care of patients, a serious job. We're talking to surgeons. But for anybody who's really good at their job, like, you see, especially in surgery in these high stakes environments, like, it's actually the best rooms to be in are a lot of fun because you rely on your team. You know, everyone's going to do their job well. If shit hits the fan, the tone changes and you can trust that. But I think because you trust your team, it's fun, in more moments than not, because there's just so much trust that when things get serious, people will speak up and it's safe. I think like when you're psychologically safe, it's enjoyable, it's fun. And you also feel like you can speak up when you say something wrong. And I feel like those are the healthiest, like work dynamics, both in healthcare, then especially in med tech, when you're putting a product out there, like you want somebody to say something if they see a problem with your product before it goes to market, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I love that. I love that perspective too of you're absolutely right. Healthcare, medical devices, it is serious by nature and it should be like we should take our jobs seriously. But at the same time, if we could not maybe take ourselves as seriously and, and infuse the fun. And it does help also, I think, dissipate some of that. Well, some of the really hard, again, those days that are tough, it helps to be able to say, take a step back and go, you know what? Yes, and
Right, 100%. Yeah, it adds a little like brevity to the really serious moments to
yeah,
be able to, and I think that at the end of the day, like you being in whatever your place is in healthcare and med tech, like whatever role you're playing, like you are helping advance the field, you're helping patient care. I think always keeping that in mind, even on like the tough days, like you're advancing something in a good way, keeps you centered on like your why and drives you forward in a really good way versus like, and I'll be honest, like it got hard for me in my CEO role. Like I think I lost my why a little bit and my driver because it's very hard to see, okay, well, how am I impacting patient care positively? How am I impacting the world positively when you're chasing down insurance reimbursements and whatnot? And, dealing with hospital shutdowns during COVID. So I think at the end of the day, I realized like I need to find a way for this to be enjoyable and fun because I also realize I'm my best self and I'm more creative and I'm more in like a problem solving zone when I'm in that good mindset. And so I look at it as a huge positive to figure out what drives you and make you happy.
Yeah. What drives you and makes you happy. And I agree with you. If you can also take a step back sometimes and have that broader perspective and mix it with just a little bit of humor, even if just all you're doing is taking a quick break and watching, I don't know, a funny cat video or something. Yeah.
Sure.
Those reset moments make a difference. So,
Yeah.
you're a board member of several organizations, and I wondered if you could speak a little bit to those organizations and what led you to get involved with them.
Yeah, so the two I'm on the board of is one, Nepal Spine Foundation, which I went to Nepal with a few surgeons I worked with. And then when I was in figuring out my why, when I stepped away, the surgeons who were started the foundation invited me to join the board. And actually, I will be going to Nepal with them in April, and we'll be doing another mission and then hiking to Everest Base Camp together. I'm looking forward to that. And it's been amazing because I think that's also, I've gotten to go on a lot of mission trips in my career. I've gotten to go to Ghana and Barbados, Dominican Republic, Nepal, India. And so, like, I also realize, like, impact being my driver. Like, I have so much impact to teach people about neuromonitoring, which isn't a well-known, aspect of surgery always. And so the fact that I could leave a hospital, a community better for going there really was a driver. So the fact that I continue to do that work is really important. And then the second is Stripes, which is how I met you,
Yeah.
women in MedTech. And, the nice thing is I went back before I fully launched GoodKnight Consulting and became like a device rep just to kind of figure out, do I want to go back into sales? What do I really want to do? And I was a little lost and I found my way, I wanted community. And when I found this group, it was just transformative for me. Like my mentor was Lisa Jacobs, who is phenomenal and has been in spine for a very long time. And she actually really pushed me to do my dream and start and really put all into my coaching and consulting. So I'm really grateful for that. And then she invited me to be on the board. So like to continue to give back to an organization that I feel like personally gave me, like it's why I am where I am today. It gave me that push I needed and that support. And there's tons of women in the organization, like Claire Davis, Kat Hurd, like Courtney George. They're all out there. They're all public on LinkedIn. And that was something that honestly initially scared me. And so I was inspired by them, supported. And I think that's a really, great thing when you are becoming an entrepreneur is finding your community and that support.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So I love the fact that you're doing both of those things. The mission work is really cool. It's amazing to hear how you've gotten to use, well, because you're so driven by impact, how you've gotten to do that and then make a big difference in the lives of people that, may otherwise never have had that opportunity or, at least not for a while or whatever. So,
Right? For sure.
yeah, that's really incredible. So, through that or throughout your career, are there any moments that really stand out to you as kind of affirming, wow, I am in the right industry at the right time?
I think med tech, like always, even if it's not me and something I'm doing, like seeing people who I know in the industry and accomplishments they've made and organizations that I've either been a part of or supported in some way in my career, like just seeing like the new tech coming out and the advancements they're making just reaffirms like I'm part of a bigger picture and an ecosystem that's really great. And even, like I came from the spine space when I was doing medical device and spine is, tough, like ortho's tough, spine's tough. It's a lot of competition, but, I think competition drives quality. And so it's really cool. Even if you see your competitor doing something, you're like, oh man, I wish we would have, but it's getting done. It's, it's pushing the envelope. It's making it better. And I think that's huge. And really exciting too when I found you and Project MedTech to see how you guys are helping support like startups and investors and people who are looking to get into this space. Because I think that's the other thing is getting fresh perspective and new innovative companies helps everybody. Like drives the mission forward, drives the impact forward at patient care.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And okay. So another very random thing that I found on your LinkedIn, but I just really liked it because I resonate with this aspect. So you started to paint. You learned how to paint. Did you tell us about that? And does that play a role in your creativity overall, do you think?
I think so. So I hosted like a happy hour for girlfriends, and we did this thing where we painted like thrift store paintings and like Halloween things in them. And I live in the Pacific Northwest, which is beautiful. We have a 100-year-old cabin on 3 acres, and it was October. It was just like stunning. And I was looking out at my backyard, and I was like, I want to paint this. And I just sat down. I mean, I'm not artistic. And it looked like an 8-year-old painted it. And my partner, Joe, was like, maybe watch a video. Great. I loved it, and so I found, like apparently every episode of Bob Ross was on Netflix, at least last year. And so I just started watching some videos on YouTube, and I started getting better and better pretty quickly. Like I started, you know, little tutorials here and there. And then I realized like I was also reading books to help me kind of get in this entrepreneurial mindset, like Growth Mindset or Mindset by Carol Dweck, which talks about growth mindset. And I realized like you can teach yourself to do anything. Like I had told myself for the longest time. I mean, I'm 40. And so I told myself for 40 years, like, I'm not artistic. That was my box I painted around myself. And then all of a sudden I was like, well, let's give it a shot. And so, I realized like you set these boundaries and your parameters in your head and you blow them up a little bit. Like, you know what? Like, let's just see, let's try, and I see this with our teenagers too, is sometimes like when they struggle in school, they'll be like, I'm not smart or I'm not this. And I'm like, you just have to try. Like anything worth doing takes effort. And if everybody quit because they weren't good the first time or even like the 10th time, like imagine how little progress we would make as a society. So I think if something you want to do something, recognizing like you can learn to do it. And I think that also helped ignite like me knowing I could do my consulting company and really launch it. And so I just started reaching out to people who had done it. And I hired coaches and I started to learn more about what would make it work and what I would need to do. And, what a novel idea, right? You find the person who's doing what you want to do and you learn from them, and it's just like that entire journey over the last year was really helpful to, I think, get me to the head place like I needed to be to leave the safety of a W-2 job and launch a company just to like lie, to myself and be like, you can do it because, if you start every day with I don't know if this is going to work. Like there's no way I would have done this. I really had to tell myself I could do it. It was going to work. And I realized now that I've gotten past that, it's very hard like to put a boundary around me now. Like that was a challenge, right? Like if you tell me I can't do something, I'm like, oh, let's, I bet even if I'll fail like the first few times, I want to try to see if I can do it because I now have this delusion that I can teach myself to do just about anything. So
That's awesome.
you're not.
Yeah, no, that is incredible. And you're absolutely right. I think we can all relate to, at least in some element of our lives, painting boxes around ourselves and going, I'm not this, or I'm not that, or I'll never get to be able to do this. I'll never be proficient. And those things aren't true. It's just what we tell ourselves. So I love the fact that painting opened up those doors for you.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I think it's like a metaphor for life. And I think I hear that a lot of times from people would be like, I wish I could do what you do. You can literally do anything.
Yeah.
That's how crazy. And, we're in peak New Year's resolution time, right? And I think a lot of people are like, oh, I want to do this and do that. And that's like, you can. You just like, if you want to be a person who exercises more, just go start exercising.
Right.
That's how wild the world, like our brains can make us do whatever we want. So anyway, I'm also a big psychology buff because I'm a big believer in like the power of the human brain and what it can do over your decision making and your life and the impact it can have, everything really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I love that perspective. And yeah, growth mindset is a wonderful gift because, you can explore, you can try, And as long as you're sticking with it and doing those things, then you're not failing. You're just exploring. And then you can
Yeah.
just keep exploring and find things that are right for you. And, not everything will stick, and that's okay too. So,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I always tell people I'm still figuring out what I want to do when I grow
mhm,
up. Yeah.
yeah,
And I think that's an ongoing thing. And I hope when I'm 80, I still am figuring out like what's next
yeah,
and
I
exciting.
love
So,
that. Yeah. All right. Well, pivoting the conversation a little bit just for fun. Imagine that you were to be offered $1 million to teach a masterclass on anything you want. It could be within your industry, but it doesn't have to be. What would you choose to teach?
I think this it ends up being the thing I talk about most. And it's the thing I think I wanted to do initially, but I was really struggled to just target and talk to managers, especially like frontline managers. But I think that transition from being an independent contributor to becoming a first time leader, like if I could teach a master class in that, I think that would be really fun. I see so many very empathetic and like capable independent contributors, whether they be like a real rock star sales rep or even a great like technologist or engineer. And then they're like, okay, well, I need to move up the ladder. I'm going to be a people manager. And then their next step is people management. And they're like, this sucks. Nobody told me about like all the things I have to deal with in the people. And you're still in the mindset of like box checking of like, in order to be successful, I have to do all these things. I have to do X, Y, and Z. And I think that the second I stopped checking all the boxes and trying to do all the things was when I went from being like a manager to an actual leader of people and activating them. And if I could just get a few people who I believe, like I've even seen so many really great people leave the industry because they feel like they want to advance, but they don't see because they weren't a good manager, like, well, how would I ever be a good director or a good VP or so on and so forth? Reality is like probably the hardest transition is going from independent contributor to a manager.
Yeah.
And yet it's like the least supported space.
Yeah.
So I think that's something I feel deeply passionate about and would love to like be able to offer as a resource more for people.
Yeah. And that would be an incredible masterclass. Okay. And then how do you wish to be remembered after you leave this world?
Ooh, I love that one. I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's the impact thing, and I don't even think it has to be this like big, like, oh, I, solved healthcare in Ghana. Like, it's not that. It's almost like I hope that like my company and my interaction with people leaves everyone feeling a little lighter, a little happier, like a little more capable to do like something. And they feel like talking with me, working with me has unlocked like the next level of something that they've been struggling with and makes them feel like, okay, I can do this now. Cause I almost feel like that's what coaching and consulting comes down to is I'm not doing the thing for anybody. I am only helping to remove the roadblock around them that they stop limiting themselves and they really see what's possible just by making a few changes in the way they think, in the way they operate their business or run their team. And, amazing things happen. So my hope is that I just continue to get to do that and have people that really feel positive impact from that.
Yeah. Well, that is a beautiful legacy. So, yeah. All right. And then, final question. What is one thing that makes you smile every time you see or think about it?
Oh gosh. Well, we just talked about this before our call, but my dog, I'm an animal lover. And so I have the fortune that most every day, I'm in my home office and I get to go on a hike or walk with my dogs, either around our property or out somewhere in beautiful Washington. And I think just like seeing the mountains and being out with my dog, like that just makes me smile. And I think it's also what inspired me to paint and all the things. So I think just all the beauty like in the world just makes me smile and makes my heart very happy.
I love that. Oh my goodness. That's beautiful. All right. Well, this has been an amazing conversation, Logan. I so appreciate you and your time today. And we're so honored to be making a donation on your behalf as a thank you for your time today to the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, which is dedicated to preventing animal cruelty in the United States. So thank you for choosing that. organization to support. And we just wish you continued success as you work to change lives for a better world.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We'll talk soon.
All right, sounds good. Thank you and take care.
The Leading Difference is brought to you by Velentium Medical. Velentium Medical is a full-service CDMO serving MedTech clients worldwide to securely design, manufacture, and test Class 2 and Class 3 medical devices. Velentium Medical's 4 units include research and development, pairing electronic and mechanical design, embedded firmware, mobile app development, and cloud systems, with the human factor studies and systems engineering necessary to streamline medical device regulatory approval. Contract manufacturing, building medical products at the prototype, clinical, and commercial levels in the U.S. as well as in low-cost regions in 1345 certified and FDA-registered Class 7 clean rooms. Cybersecurity, generating the 12 cybersecurity design artifacts required for FDA submission. And automated test systems, assuring that every device produced is exactly the same as the device that was approved. Visit ValentiumMedical.com to explore how we can work together to change lives for a better world.